Hello, everyone, and welcome to another now outdoor fire pit patio talk. If you're Lindley and your Wi-Fi is not as great, you're in your house. If you're me, you're at Derryfield, so I'm actually on the Gateway patio here at school. And in order for this to look so effortless and full of Wi-Fi, the wonderful Annie Branch is here making it all magically happen for me. So it won't be as exciting as last time with my husband ready to fire that tractor up at any moment. But who knows? Who knows what could happen? It's a live broadcast. We'll see. We'll see. So welcome everyone. And we are here. The purpose of these evenings is to share with you all our progress in preparing for the reopening of school here on our beautiful campus. And if there is one quote that bears repeating, it is the old Hebrew saying, man makes plans, God laughs. And our leadership team and our reopening team, we revisit this statement often, reminding ourselves that for all our planning, at any moment circumstances may change and then we will change plans. But for now, we're going to tell you the truth as we know it at this moment. This is really going to be a year of relying on each other's flexibility, adaptability, good humor, compassion. It's not going to be like last year, and it's hopefully not going to be like next year. It is not going to be perfect, but it's going to be full of those values that we so admire and value: creativity and trust and connection and curiosity, and absolutely the relationship building that we all cherish at Derryfield. So that's where we are.
Oh, thanks for that introduction, Mary. My name is Lindley Schutz, and I am the Assistant Head of School for Academics, and it's so nice to be back with you again. I wish I had the tree line behind me as well. Mary, I thought it might be helpful if we started for some families who might be joining us for the first time, just to bring you up to date on the process that we put into place as we begin to plan for next year.
Sure. So just to kind of review, back in April, we hired a company called Fusion Cell, which is a group of expert consultants in public health and epidemiology. They are highly experienced in managing public health incidents for the military around the world, and especially on military bases. And we organized a team of Derryfield colleagues who address all aspects of school life in our knowledge normally, and then in our planning for reopening. And so that includes academics and athletics, community connection, student life, space use, transportation, communications, and more. And our reopening team has been meeting 2 times every week, and will continue to do so. Then on top of that, we're in consistent meetings with the Board of Trustees, with the student leadership through the student council, with faculty and staff. In fact, we had a faculty meeting just today, and with our parent groups. And what our practice has been is that we gather questions from the community, we share them with the health consultants and our key leaders, and that guides and informs our planning and our communication. So we work all together, all these wise people in concert. And we're operating under certain guiding principles. And those are that as we plan, the health and well-being of our students and their families, our faculty, our coaches, our staff is paramount. Academics are paramount, building those critical foundations of knowledge, inspiring curiosity and engagement, having a personalized education, and then also having a deep spirit of community. And in these strange times, we're finding creative ways to connect, and we certainly did it through last spring through our virtual program. And while every day is going to feel different and be different as we enter into the fall, our values and the values that guide us will remain the same. So Lindley, would you tell us a little about what we'll be talking about tonight?
Sure. At our last fire pit chat, we provided an overview of safety guidelines and protocols. We shared a vision of the new schedule, particularly as it related to health protocols and making time for students to learn and follow those guidelines. and we provided updates on questions related to sports and academics. And after that talk, we sent out a letter to reach out to families who may not have been able to join us for the chat, or for those who prefer to get all of that kind of information in a letter form. Tonight, we're going to offer information about masks, the return to school, and an update to the daily schedule. Differently than last time, all of the information that follows now is going to be in an exciting new medium for our community. Tonight, we're introducing a new landing page on the website, and it's going to be devoted entirely to the school's reopening in this year. So whenever someone has a question, they can go to that page on the Derryfield website to find information about what will unfold this year. So just to follow up on some of the really good questions that came to us after our last chat, a number of parents have raised questions about masks. And we understand their concerns. We know that for some students, masks can raise a challenge in terms of feeling like they're connecting or engaging, and sometimes they just feel uncomfortable. Yet we know too that all of the research indicates that masks play an absolutely critical role in mitigating the spread of the disease. So I'd love for us to start tonight by talking about Derryfield's policy regarding masks and how we'll help students navigate them as a whole new habit, just like putting on our seatbelts.
Sure. So Derryfield has always considered the health and the safety of our students and teachers and staff a high priority. And as we navigate this new COVID environment, we realize that we have to extend that safety net beyond our walls and into sort of each and every person that our community touches. And so this is a really new lens for schools, that the safety and the staff now extends to caring for the safety of the people in those households from which our colleagues and our kids come, and our close contacts. So we really feel it's our duty to implement measures that keep students, teachers, staff, and also family members and the broader community safe. And as educators, we recognize that expertise in this kind of subject really is to be found in other quarters. We are not epidemiologists. And so as I mentioned earlier, we've enlisted the services of board certified public health epidemiologists who have these decades of experience in disease mitigation and planning and execution. And they have really advised that mask wearing is a risk reduction tool that's been adopted by almost every country around the world. And that with distancing and with limiting students and staff's contact with other people outside the community and with contact tracing, that we believe we can reduce the viral risk to everyone on campus as well as their families. We've decided to start with mask on during the school day, and this requirement may loosen. Again, as I said at the very beginning of this evening, the future is largely unknown to us. And so if the disease profile of Manchester and the communities we serve really evolves, then we may be loosening that requirement. But we're starting with masks on campus as a requirement. And we really continue to gain knowledge from the experience of other countries who are ahead of us in the reopening of schools. A major element in how successful schools have been is how the community around the school behaves. So for example, in Denmark, students followed health guidelines, as did residents, and so they had much better success in keeping schools open for in-person learning. Israel, though, is an example of a country that did not follow best practices and was plagued by school closures. So we want to have the Denmark experience. So this is really the first time in my lifetime where everyone is responsible for the health of everyone else. You know, earlier today, I was in a book discussion of the wonderful book, The Splendid and the Vile, which is a book about Winston Churchill and the London Blitz and how was it that everyone survived. And it was so clear that people in London understood that the health of everyone depended on my adherence to things that keep us all safe, like turning the lights off in my apartment at a certain time of day. There were even stories of tons and tons of bicycle crashes because people wouldn't put the lights on in their bicycle out of fear that they would attract the German knowledge of where their city was. This is really the first time in our lifetime that the basic values of caring and empathy and family and respect for science are all coming together in how we behave. And so I have great confidence that actually our compliance will be strong. So masks are going to be worn indoors, and we are going to plan for mask breaks outdoors at regular intervals. We're so blessed to have 84 plus acres of land here that are such a lovely and spacious place for people to get outdoors. If a student doesn't follow the guidelines, or if a family decides that mask wearing isn't an option, then they will be directed to learn through our virtual learning program off campus. And just remember that our decision making and our recommendations really prioritize the safety of all. I wanted to show you also our athletic department. Chris Hetler has found us a mask that Lindley will be talking about, but I wanted to show you a sample. This is a 3-ply mask. It will have the Derryfield logo on it. It's adjustable to make it more comfortable, and there's even a name tag in it, so you can write your child's name just like going to camp. And so we will be in sort of a new regime with that. And I guess what I just want us to remember is that we're making a 1-year commitment to each other, an agreement to care for each other out of a shared desire for the same thing, and that's to be on campus learning together. Lindley, you've been working with faculty and students to ease and faculty and students on ways to ease students into wearing masks. What are some of the steps that we're going to take to encourage mask wearing and support students?
Our students have been so helpful in helping us think about ways that will just help other students sort of acculturate to this whole new process. And one of our students the other day just mentioned to me, she said, I remember the first few times I had to put on facial masking and mouth guard for sports and how awkward it felt. But she said, once I began to play and I was absorbed in the game over time, I just didn't notice them at all. And it was just something we all did. So that's really our goal. So we're going to start by providing each student with 5 masks. The masks will be charged to the family's account. And the idea then is that they have one for each day of the week so that they can wash them daily so that they stay clean and available. We're providing the masks, the ones that Mary just showed, so that there's a sense that we're all in this together. And so that also as a teacher, when we walk by and we're helping a student make sure they're following safety guidelines, we all know that they're wearing masks that meet the highest standard. Faculty will also be wearing those masks. So there's going to be a sense that we're all in this together, all wearing the same thing. One of the reasons that we're phasing students back in by grade level, both through the retreats and then in the first week of school, is so that we can provide plenty of time for students to learn how to wear the masks adequately. During that time, our school nurse, Michelle LeClaire, and Jill Roberts, our safety director, will be running sessions in multiple modes through video and in person and through signage throughout the school, reminding students when to wear masks, where to wear masks, how to fit them to your face so that they feel comfortable, how to remove them and store them safely so that when the next time you put them on, they're clean and they're not gathering up other things from other germs from other places. And then again, how to help students remember to wash them and keep them clean on a daily basis. Our student leaders are also going to work with us to create videos and signage to put up throughout the school with the theme of One Derryfield, wearing is caring. And then as Mary was just explaining, we'll also provide times during the day with supervision for students to be outside, step safely away from each other, 6 feet away, take off the mask and just sort of have a quiet break where they can get some fresh air before putting masks back on and going inside. And Mary, I understand that just in the last few days, we've had some exciting breaking news that I think will help to offset all of this responsibility around masks, that it's going to make our students very happy. Do you want to share that news?
I'd be delighted to share some happy news, which is that we will be having a 1-year relaxation of the dress code. And that's in recognition of the need for greater comfort this year. And so the elements of the dress code that will remain the same: no hats, no inappropriate clothing or clothing that disrupts the educational process or students' right to learn. But this year, students may wear athletic gear and sweatpants to school. And so this year, I think the best dressed student is going to be wearing a Derryfield mask and Derryfield athletic gear for sure, or other comfy clothes that make them feel comfortable coming to school. There's a practical element to this one-year change too, which is that the student council and faculty and staff want to be emphasizing the health guidelines and really enforcing those rather than enforcing dress code issues. And also, it will ease the transition from classes to sports, largely eliminating the need to gather in a locker room, which it has issues of its own. So instead, students will be ready for sports potentially all through the day. So my hope is that soon all of this will feel as familiar as wearing a seatbelt, as you mentioned earlier. So let's get back to talking about school plans. You know, our core value of caring will really be a lived value this year. And the way that we live our lives off campus and on campus as individuals and as families are going to really embody our commitment to protecting those in the Derryfield community. So as families, we will be taking care of other people, taking care of the Derryfield community by doing the following: avoiding non-essential travel, especially but via places where people are in close confinement or in areas that have rising COVID counts. If one travels outside of New England or on public transportation anywhere, you will show your care by building in a quarantine time. And more detailed information will be on the landing page about what a proper quarantine is. Even in New England, please be vigilant. This is like this is making the tractor look light. I think I've got helicopters and motorcycles simultaneously on River Road, everybody. A moment. And just as I was talking about transportation, but even in New England, be vigilant about local viral trends. For example, right now, the number of COVID cases that are on the South Shore of Massachusetts down near Rhode Island is minuscule, but the number of cases in Nantucket is rising because of visitors from out of state flying into Nantucket. And so please don't risk exposure in a county that's having an upward viral trend because you think the state is doing fine. Be tuned into that. And then for families who are currently participating in travel, sports teams, or visiting grandparents in states outside of New England, or engaged in any kind of travel, you're going to need to return home and self-quarantine by August 17th in order to be ready to start school on the first day of retreats, August 31st. If we have preseason sports, then the quarantine for families whose children will be in preseason sports will need to begin August 3rd, which is this Monday. We're going to confirm the status of preseason sports as soon as possible. There's an NHIAA meeting happening this week, and we hope to have more information on that very, very soon. You will also show your care and your good judgment by steering clear of events anywhere that bring together large groups of people, and even a small number of people who aren't adhering to PPE guidelines, including mask wearing and sanitizing and social distancing of 6 feet. So that's an important thing to think about. And this is especially true in settings where we're unfamiliar with the setting, or it's likely to be congested or kind of confused. We will also show our care by keeping an unbending promise to wear masks in any public setting that we're in, to wash hands frequently and pay special attention to preventative hygiene measures, because what happens with one family member we know has a high risk of transferring to another family member in the home, and then that child could tragically go to Derryfield and pass that along. Also, the community will depend on every family completing daily wellness checks before school using the Magnus Health app. And we're going to soon have, probably in the very next fire pit chat, there will be instructions on how to do that with Michelle LeClaire, our school nurse. And we all have to commit to never ever coming to school sick. This leads me to really ask of you, please pursue vaccination for seasonal flu, the regular old-fashioned flu, to limit transmission of that illness, because that illness weakens people's immune systems, making them more vulnerable to COVID. It's also can be dangerous to some people in itself, but even more than that, a lot of the symptoms of the typical seasonal flu mimic COVID. So you can imagine it could really send the community topsy-turvy if people are getting the seasonal flu. Also, if you could swiftly respond to calls or requests or updates from Derryfield regarding the health of your student, that would be so helpful. And then if at home you could continue kind of creating this consistent reinforcement of the messages at school and at home, promoting healthy choices and proven practices to limit any potential COVID exposure. It's so important that parents and faculty and staff are partners in this, because we know it's tiring. We're all tired of coping with the pandemic. So we're really going to need to kind of bolster each other and our kids to stay consistent. And then finally, I would ask you to really speak up in your circles of influence in support of these essential principles, knowing the difference that each of us and all of us can make, and the importance of setting an example for our region at this time of great need, one decision at a time, starting today. Again, to be like Denmark, the wider community all has to really behave smartly, and that will help us keep our school open.
Mary, with all of these safety guidelines in place, I feel so confident and excited about welcoming all of our students and families back to campus. And I'd love to just share with everybody some of the exciting news that in addition to our 44 new students who will be joining the middle school and our 34 new families who will be joining in the upper school, we also just in this last week had an additional 6 families join us, so that we're going to be welcoming back a robust community of students to campus.
Well, as you can imagine, being that Derryfield is one of the very, very few schools in the whole state of New Hampshire that is planning a full on-campus daily school experience, there are numerous families who are seeking admission right now. So if you families know of a student or a family that would be a great asset to our community, please advise them to act quickly in reaching out to the admission office, because we will be at capacity very soon. So it's important to act fast if there's a wonderful family, wonderful student out there. So Lindley, will you talk about retreats, or how we welcome new kids in and how we build camaraderie amongst kids who are returning? Can you talk about how those will look this year?
I'd love to. Retreats are always one of my favorite parts of the year. So Derryfield has a fantastic tradition of retreats. Every year, our Dean of Students, our Dean of Student Life, our head class advisors for each grade level, and our student leadership within each grade level get together in the spring and in the summer to create inviting experiences for all of our students on the first few days that they return to campus. This year, we've extended the number of days of retreats so that we can bring just 1 or 2 grade levels to campus each day. The retreats will start on August 31st and run through September 3rd. And the goals are just the same this year as they've always been. The goals are to reconnect with returning students and to help them connect with new students and welcome them. It's a chance for our students to meet their advisors and to get together in advisory groups. It's also a chance for them to begin to understand sort of the logistics of being back on campus and learning some things about the culture and the community. So during that first week of August 31 through September 3rd, students will be returning to campus on retreats. And during that time, we'll be hosting the retreats in 2 forms. The first is that before students come to campus, they might meet virtually. And the idea there is that that will give all the students a chance to meet each other for the first time and to reconnect with each other without masks, so that they get to meet each other really face to face. And then when they come to campus, they'll recognize that person better from the eyes up as they're getting to know each other and interact each other in person on campus. After that first week of retreats, which is the initial welcome, we're then also doing something really creative and I think innovative to help us introduce students back to campus in a way that will help everyone settle in with ease. So the idea is that starting on September 8th, which is a Tuesday, on Tuesday, September 8th, and on Wednesday, September 9th, students will begin to come back to campus grade by grade. So on those first 2 days, grades 8, 11, and 12 will come back to campus. And they will have 2 days to get to understand how to move through the school following all the safety guidelines. During those days, the classes won't be academically focused. They'll really be geared towards introducing students to the new protocols and just helping them settle in. On those 2 days, the grades that are not on campus, those are grades 6th, 7th, 9th, and 10th, will not attend classes. There will be no virtual school those first 2 days. Then the following 2 days, taking feedback from those first 2 days, we will welcome the next group, 6th, 7th, 9th, and 10th to campus. So on Thursday and Friday, that will be their turn, and they'll come to school and they'll meet their teachers in their classrooms, and they'll, just as the previous classes did, they'll learn all of the new health protocols and settle in. All of this means that our very first day back on campus, everybody all together, fully prepared for classes, will be on Monday, September 14th.
So last time we shared a schedule, if you remember, and then we realized that we needed to change the schedule because we needed to provide better supervision and minimize groupings of students and provide time for extra help. And so I wonder, Lindley, would you please share with everyone the new schedule?
Sure. All right, can you see it? Excellent. All right, so what has changed since the last time we shared the schedule with you are just really 2 areas. One is that if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see an example of our daily schedule. And what this is showing is day 1 and day 2. Students will actually all be moving through our 8-day rotation. This is just an example of what's on the left, which is an odd day, and on the right, which is an even day. So all students will be on campus all the time, except for those who decide to be learning from home. And what this schedule is showing us is the modification that Mary just mentioned, which is that we have decided to return to our 75-minute flexible blocks in order to accomplish a number of things. Primarily, the extended time is for teaching and learning. But in addition, we wanted to build in time for students to begin homework and to get extra help. We also wanted teachers to have greater flexibility about when students might need a break from class to step outside and have a fresh air break or a mask break. And so they could build that break in any time during that hour and 15 minutes. And then finally, at the end of that academic block of 75 minutes is the 15-minute passing time that we described in the last Fireside chat. And that 15 minutes is set aside for students to move safely from one class to the next. The other change that's occurred since the last time we chatted about the schedule has to do with after school. And what you'll see in the schedule when you look to the lower left is that the academic day will end at 2:30, and then sports and other passion pursuits will begin at 2:45. So from 2:45 to 4:15, students will have the opportunity to participate in a number of after-school activities. For those who are participating in sports in the middle school, they'll meet 3 times a week. Upper school sports will meet 4 times a week. And in addition, students will have the option to participate in a major activity 1 day a week. And some of those major activities are listed on the right-hand side, and those include things like robotics, yearbook, Model UN, and other activities that students will co-lead with advisors. Then the final change that has been made since the last time we chatted was on Wednesdays, instead of having a delayed opening, there's going to be an early release. And that again is occurring because we knew that we needed to provide more direct supervision for all of our students in both the middle school and the upper school. So on Wednesdays, the day will end at 2:30. We'll encourage students to be taking the bus or be picked up by 2:45. And at that point, faculty will attend faculty meetings, which we're especially going to need in this year of change and innovation. For students who do need to stay later on Wednesdays, there will of course still be the study hall option, as there is every day, Monday through Friday. And then finally, the late bus will leave each day at 4:30. So I hope one of the takeaways from tonight is that while this year is going to be filled with lots of fluctuations and we're going to be adapting and being flexible in all the ways that Mary said, at the heart of all of this is going to continue to be our really strong academic program and all of the community opportunities that we make available to students so that they feel a sense of connection and belonging.
Absolutely. We'll be looking for, by the way, in terms of the after school study hall, we'll be looking for a formal commitment to that. And the reason for that is that it wouldn't be as informal as it has been in the past, is really because we've just got to provide better oversight. And we also want the ability to assist the health department in accurate tracing, knowing who was where at a given time, if someone comes down with the virus and we need to get in touch with anybody they were in contact with. So now we're going to go to some of the questions in the chat, and a couple of the questions have to do with the early sports. So first of all, even in a normal year, if this were a normal year, you as student can start sports the first day of school. They don't have to go to preseason sports. Also, preseason sports isn't relevant for the middle school. You know, it's optional for JV. It's really a varsity kind of requirement in a normal year. But this year it is not required. If it happens. And the reason I say if it happens is that we play in a public school league that's very unusual. Usually schools like Derryfield play in an independent school league, but we play in a public school league. And I was just on a call with public school principals from across the state this morning. And as you can imagine, their challenges in reopening are just immense. They're just immense. The numbers of students they're working with, the square footage of their buildings, the budget that they have for their bus services make this much more complicated. And so many of those schools have already announced that they actually will, on their, what would have been the first week of school, will actually be a professional development week, and that their schools are actually starting, you know, like September 8th, 9th. So they're really undetermined, unclear right now. So in terms of the sports season, that question about would we play if NHIAA says it's okay to play, the director of NHIAA made it clear that schools need to do what's right for the schools, and the NHIAA is going to try to loosen their requirements so that schools can make the choices they will, understanding that there will certainly be public schools that will not have any sports this year of any kind because they just can't make it work with on-campus academics. We, though, as Lindley's schedule showed you, we are committed to a Derryfield sports program on our campus, regardless of whether we play other schools. And so that really remains to be seen, that playing of other schools. Let's see, here's a question. When does the Wednesday after school supervision end? When do students need to be picked up by? Lindley, do you know the answer to that? Because I certainly do not.
Yes, so each day there will be 2 bus departures. The first bus will depart at 2:45, and on Wednesdays we would really hope that students would either take that 2:45 bus or that parents would be able to come pick up their students by 2:45. If a student does need to stay later, there will be study hall coverage at the end of the day. and students can make that commitment to that Wednesday consistently if they'd like to do so at the beginning of each month. The faculty meetings will run from 2:45 until 4:15. So we would ask for all students to be off campus on Wednesdays by 4:30 when that late bus also leaves.
So there's a question about masks and a clarification. Yes, the Derryfield mask, and I'm showing you the prototype. Meanwhile, imagine a Derryfield seal here. This mask will be the required mask. That's why students are getting 5 of them, so they have enough for a school week. Faculty and staff the same. That way we know it's 3-ply. It's exactly what is going to be safe. And so we don't have to, our faculty and staff don't have to be in the business of checking kids' masks to see how thick they are. Can you imagine with all the other things we're trying to do? That would be terribly inefficient. So the Derryfield mask is required. There are some wonderful questions in the chat, like Gabby asks, Zola asks us, can you walk us through the steps of what happens when a student stays home with a fever and testing and the community notification? That's going to be the focus of the next fire pit chat, which will be all about that. So we're going to save that kind of level for that next one. Another question is about from Charlotte is students can, whoops, this is hopping around. Can students participate in sports after school as well as one club? Lindley, would you respond to that, please?
Yes, so the idea of this passion pursuit afternoon is that a student could participate in sports, but then one day a week, their coaches will understand that they opt to participate in that major activity. So the goal is really, everyone knows they're coming into this year with the spirit of being flexible so that students can pursue not only sports that they love, but also other major activities that they love.
So there's a great question here about, is it a concern of ours that if we are to play athletes from against other schools that have lower safety protocols in place, that might bring the possibility of infection to the Derryfield campus? Definitely that is a concern. That's why it's not NHIAA's decision whether Derryfield plays interscholastic games or how they work, and the NHIA is being very deferential to schools to make those decisions. So we will be making that decision as we move along and get closer. Let's see, another question here is about buses. 100% masks are required on buses, and pre-screening is required on buses for the bus driver and for the students. There's another question about quarantining of the bus drivers. Absolutely. And there's that trade-off of when will you have people in closer contact and farther apart contact. Well, we realize we've got to use the buses to get kids to school and home from school. That's really essential. And so kids will have the masks on the whole time. They'll be cleaning on their hands, sanitizing on the way in and on the way out. But they will be in closer contact than they would be in our 6-foot apart classrooms. And ventilation on the buses will not be at the high standard that the ventilation will be in our classrooms, which will have the excellent HEPA filters and the air purifiers. So that's why if a student rides a bus and someone on that bus tests positive, COVID positive, the whole bus gets quarantined. Everybody on the bus gets quarantined. And so just to reiterate, if you want to reconsider your child's choice of bus service and instead drive your child to school, you're certainly allowed to do so. Caveat would be, I would think extremely carefully about carpooling, because you just exposed your child in an even more confined space with potentially worse ventilation to other people and all the choices that the family is making in the time they're not in school. Jen Grumbeck with a great question on the lunch program. So the lunch is, it's very important that kids are able to order lunch at school. And it's also important that we not put kids in big groups, right? How many people had sad weddings that they can't go to this summer, right? Can't have big groups of people dining together. Certainly not with open food. So students will have lunch with the class and teacher of either the class before lunch and then possibly then another day the class after lunch. in part, so Celebrations Catering can find the students to deliver the lunches to them. They will most likely be cold lunch, lunch box kinds of, what am I saying? Box lunch. That would be the word that we use for that term. Box lunches, and then kids can bring their own lunch as well. There won't be a microwave in each classroom, in part because we don't want people touching the same small appliances. So we're not going to be doing that. There are rehearsals for the play. Lindley, could you comment on the rehearsals for plays, please?
Sure. So the rehearsals for the plays will happen during that same designated time of 2:45 to 4:15. Um, and if there are times that the rehearsals might need to go later, Mr. Westenberg would communicate that to families in the same ways that he always does. I'm also seeing some good questions here about, is there an option for smaller classes to meet out of doors? Absolutely. It's one of the things we're most excited about because we have this beautiful campus that you can see behind Mary. We're going to have areas with Adirondack chairs laid out. We're going to have some circles sort of mapped out for students so that faculty absolutely will be taking students out of doors for classes. In fact, one of my favorite moments this week is when I was talking to the art department about their plans to take painting classes outside. It's just in that way, it's going to be wonderful. There's also a question here about how will we know which sports, for a new student, how will we know which sports potentially start in preseason and if they should report for preseason?
Right. And we'll make all that clear when we're clarifying if we're having preseason at all. So that will all be laid out, not to worry. We'll put that communication out in a letter to you when we find that out. A question about the team sport requirements. So that has also been relaxed, and that's on the landing page if you want more information about that. But just like the dress codes being relaxed for the year, the sports requirements being relaxed, we think though that fitness is maybe more important this year through the stress and changes of living through a pandemic. And so what the relaxation is that a student can fulfill their sports requirement at home by walking or running in their neighborhood or on a piece of exercise equipment or whatever, or in their yard, and their parent, they can log their hours and their parent can sign off on that. And you just need to arrange that ahead of time with our athletic director, Chris Hetler, what that will be. And there'll be more information about that coming out soon. Let's see, will there be a virtual assembly communicating all this to students? Lindley, how are we going to educate students? Tell us about the wonderful student council and how they're going to help with all of this too.
So our student council is putting together a newsletter that they're going to be putting out frequently, and that will go out to students soon. And then they're also putting together videos that they plan to share with students. In addition, when students come back onto campus for retreats and other things, we're going to be sharing all of this information with them in a variety of forms, and most often sort of by demonstration from students and faculty, so they have a chance to see how things will play out. I'm also seeing I'm seeing a good question here about, can students choose a hybrid option between remote and on-campus learning? Mary, do you want to address that?
There is not a hybrid option. You're either on campus or you're virtual. And the reason is that we think more than ever, it's so important that a teacher is deeply in touch with how a student is doing. And you can imagine that with students who are virtual and students who are in the classroom and students who are in potentially a satellite classroom, that's going to be even more challenging than a normal year. We're actually developing technology tools to help teachers track the progress of kids in these places, but we've really got to keep that child from being a moving target so the teacher really can take good care of that student.
I'm sorry to jump in on a question that follows that. We also do understand and are really welcoming family choice around, if a student wakes up and has any symptoms, yes, we absolutely encourage them to choose to stay home. And the reason that we all feel confident about that is that we're all set up for virtual learning. So, if a child wakes up and they're sick, stay home and they can just plug in if they feel up to it, if they don't need to sleep and just get better. they can plug into virtual learning for the day.
And if you have any individual questions and concerns, you want to reach out to the division heads. So in the middle school, that would be Mark Blaisdell. In the upper school, that would be Jed Silverstein, and talk through with them your individual child's situation. Here's a question from an excellent older sister. Is there an aftercare option for families who use an upper school 4-day athlete to drive a middle school 3-day athlete? In other words, what happens to the middle schooler while their upper school sibling is at sports practice? That sibling can be in that after school study hall. And again, Ellie, we want you to just plan ahead. Book that so that we know who's there each day. Let's see, what else?
If a family does have a challenge around the departure time at the end of the day, please communicate with us. We will help make this work for everyone. So if that 4:30 bus departure or that 4:30 end of day time doesn't work for any reason for your family, please let us know. And we're trying to figure out, given numbers, how to bridge the gap between that end of day time and what will work for most families. So please reach out. And the people you'd want to talk to are the admissions office.
Here's another good question about virtual. And what I'm trying to describe is we want kids to generally commit to one or the other. But if your child starts on campus and you feel like, ooh, this isn't the right choice for us, we want to go to virtual for the rest of the trimester for health reasons. You just speak right up and to the division head, and we can make that possible. We just don't want kids popping one between the two kind of willy-nilly. Virtual retreat introduction dates, I think they're certainly on the landing page, or will be on the landing page, right, Lindley?
Yes. We will be reaching out to students who are going to be home learning virtually for the fall. We're still trying to put together the best plan for them. We want them to participate with the full class retreat, but my sense is that we'll be planning something else specifically for those students who will be home full time, just so that they can also begin to build a community for themselves if they'd like to do so. Just an important question that someone has also raised. They said, if fitness is important, what about mental health? Our mental health team and all of our leadership team is thinking every day about what it's going to feel like to be a student in this time. That is at the heart of what we do. And so we're going to be addressing mental health in a variety of ways. Sort of on the indirect side, we all know that our teachers are loving and kind. And the most important thing is that when a child is in their class, that they are connected with that student and that they understand where they are, not only academically, but also what's going on in their life outside of class. So just in terms of their daily interaction, teachers communicate between each other on a grade level team, as well as with all of our healthcare team, to raise a concern whenever something like that arises, whether it's just sort of a one-day light thing or a more sort of sustained question. The other piece is that we have, through our LEAD program, we are developing specific curriculum around mental health, giving students the tools that they need to begin to care for themselves, but also to know when and how to reach out and who to reach out to. So both in their day-to-day academic classes, as well as through our LEAD program, which is our leadership and ethical development program, where we also teach social emotional learning skills, students will be given lots of tools for understanding mental health. And then just specifically, we have a wonderful health team. We have a full-time school counselor who will be available. We're also considering augmenting that team this year. So we'll keep everyone abreast of how that develops. But if you have thoughts or questions around that question specifically, please reach out to us to let us know.
And at that next Fireside Chat, that health and safety team includes Mary Perkins, our school counselor, and that team will be addressing those kinds of questions, as well as what are the symptoms that might cause you to keep a child at home, So all those kinds of health questions, siblings, what symptoms, should the siblings stay home or not? That will, we're going to save all these questions. Hopefully Dana, my colleague, is capturing those, and we'll fold those into the next chat. Lindley, would you explain the middle school cohorts? There's a question on that.
So in the middle school, because middle school students in each grade level share the same courses, we have been able to create really effective cohorts within the middle school. So what that means is, as a middle schooler moves throughout their day, they will share classes with the same group of students throughout the day. So they'll attend classes with them, they'll have lunch with them, and then at the end of the day, when they move into sports, that's where they will encounter either their second or third cohort, depending upon which world language class they take. So, so a middle schooler will have basically 2 cohorts in each grade level.
So here's a question about when the community blocks are in the day.
So in order to minimize the number of groups students are mingling with during the day in the upper school and in the middle school, we took that community block, which used to meet mid-morning each day, and we moved it into our 8th block. So instead of offering exploration blocks this year in the 8th block, we are introducing community block into that time. And what that means is that on every even day, day 2, 4, 6, 8, students will be engaged in some kind of community interaction. On day 2, they'll have community meeting and advisory. On day 4 and 8, they'll meet with their lead class through their advisory. And then on day 6, they'll be meeting with their advisory in a new activity called Advisory Connect, where we'll be getting out of doors and playing games and finding all different ways to sort of have downtime and also to build community. So community block is still occurring. It's just moved to a different slot in the schedule, which is 8th block.
So there are lots of questions about retreats, and that information will be on the landing page, more specific. And more about buses, and we'll get you a more detailed version of buses coming up. But just as a rule of thumb, on the buses and in the classroom, seats will be assigned. So we'll be trying to absolutely maximize the spreading out of kids in those spaces as we can. Let's see.
I'm sorry.
Grandparents' Day will be virtual, and other events will largely be virtual because we really don't want to gather big groups of people in the auditorium, really for almost any reason. We're having graduation, I am delighted to say, on Saturday, and that extravaganza has been the result of incredible planning by my colleagues, Susan Grodman and Amanda Gagney and others. Basically every graduating family is going to have a square on the turf field to separate them all, and it's outdoors, and we'll wear masks. So that's the kind of extent we're going to for large gatherings. Lindley, do you see one?
There's just one more question, I think, that has to do with dates about returning to campus. So as Mary explained earlier, the New Hampshire guidelines require or ask of us really to quarantine for 14 days if we have traveled outside of New England or been on public transportation. So there's a note here that a family will be returning, for example, from out of state Colorado on August 15th, and they're wondering about whether their child will be able to begin preseason on the 17th. So what the guidelines would recommend is that if you're returning on the 15th, you would need to quarantine for 14 days, which means that your child would be well teed up for the return to retreats. But please do check back in with us to find out what's evolving around preseason and when sports practices begin, because that information will be coming soon.
Let's see, will the question about when new students would find out the resources they need, Lindley?
Let's see, what kinds of resources do we think they mean? Does that?
I bet they're thinking like book list and what to buy to come back to school.
Um, this is so interesting. So every year we send out a really wonderful, full, rich letter in early August. And in years past, we felt like we were so ahead of the game. Well, we have been doing so much updating all summer. I think it's giving us all these feeling that these letters that usually come out in August feel late. But please know all of those back to school letters that ordinarily come from head class advisors and upper school division heads will be coming, and they'll include information about where to go online to order books. And by the way, I think our teachers have made a really conscientious effort this year to minimize the number of textbooks kids will purchase. Most of them are going to be e-readers so that they're not worried about having to carry them in their backpacks each day. But those communications will clearly communicate where to purchase books, what other supplies to bring. Mary and I talked a little bit last time about what you might pack in your child's backpack so that they've got their own private PPE set. We'll include more information about that on the landing page. And then two, those letters will include much more detailed information about retreats. And I know that our athletic department will be reaching out to all of you with lots of preseason information as that information evolves.
Let's see. A question about masks and wearing their mask properly before they're asked to attend Derryfield virtually. Okay, I can feel the palpable fear of that parent. Listen, if your child wears their mask like this, we can work with them. That's not a problem. It's when they wear their mask in their backpack that it's a problem. So not to worry. We can work with human error, right, Lindley?
Yes, absolutely.
We're good trainers. We'll work on that. Cohort list, that's interesting about looking for carpool within the cohort lists. That's something I hadn't thought about. So Lindley, we'll have to talk about that with our team about that idea. And then I think about students, where would they be able to study during their free block? Pete Brandt, the Dean of Faculty, is spending a lot of time. He's also the Space Force captain, trying to figure out our use of spaces. And in the upper school, he's really looking at how do we, largely the athletic and wellness center will be segmented into choice spaces that kids will commit to do different kinds of activity, or outdoors, to have outdoor time to talk with a friend 6 feet apart potentially, or study quietly, or do other things. So we're still working on that. I think the thing to remember, or to let you all know, because you're not here at the start of school, is there's so much training that our head class advisors and our advisors do with kids at the beginning of the school year, both through retreats, and now we're going to have that first day of school with half the school, you know, with a few classes and half with another few classes. And we'll work on making sure that kids are aware of all the opportunities that they can join or pick from, or how to do things. So not to worry. One of the things I love about our new schedule is that we thought we were really chilling things down last year with our new schedule, but this new schedule, with 15 minutes between classes to be able to walk 6 feet, you know, behind someone and have space and wash your hands, etc., and time during that 75-minute class for the teacher to take the group outside for a 6 feet apart quiet mask break, supervised, calm down. Lindley's already shared with me she's going to have her kids do some gentle yoga stretching while their masks are off 6 feet apart. I think this could really calm things down. Getting homework started in a very long class period, also a calming thing. Being able to access your teacher for extra help during a class period. All these things will make it much easier for kids to get the kind of individualized questions they have answered, but also for faculty to really well communicate with kids.
Let's see, I think there are just sort of two more specific questions. Students will be able to learn about clubs in the first couple of weeks after school begins. So what we'll be doing as we bring students back onto campus is we'll be letting them sort of settle in and learn all the protocols and get started in their classes, just as we always have in the past. In years past, we've held an activities fair in the gym. This year, I think what we'll be doing is we'll be sharing virtually information about the activities, and then students will indicate their interest in them, and then activities will begin somewhere likely around maybe the third week of school, but we'll let you know those dates as the time gets closer. And then what is the last day to commit or remove from bus service?
I think there's definitely a need for a a special bus communication. So that one of the things I've learned tonight, we need a special bus communication. We know we need more sports information, and hopefully that's becoming available. As hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have much more information on that. So we'll do some deep dives on those two topics at least. Knowing that the next fire pit chat will be health and safety protocols, and that includes mental health, and that'll be in about 2 weeks. The date we'll let you know on. I just want to also just draw everybody back to the landing page on the website. So you can go right to the website and you'll see it right there. And also, you can find the landing page on a link in the Nuts and Bolts newsletter that just came to you today. So those are two ways to get to that landing page. And that's going to be this live dynamic place where we're going to keep putting information as we know it right in there. So we want to honor everyone's time and realize they can't wait to get off the computer, I bet, at the end of a day. And just thank you so much for being here. And I just want to say the messages we get back from you are so encouraging, and they're so buoying in this time where it just feels like that we're reinventing every aspect of school life. And so I just want to thank you all for the support. You can even see it in the chat. Like, thank you so much. Our team and our faculty and staff just really appreciate our families. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.